On June 11, 2017, Marion sent one text message to her sister. Quick overnight. Should be back Sunday. According to phone records later subpoenaed by the Alaska State Troopers, her device last connected to the Toklat Ridge Tower at 21:48 hours. Investigators recovered her trip plan at her apartment, highlighted sections on route gradients, printed USGS coordinates. Nothing suggested improvisation. The Denali trails that summer had been well maintained. Line crews logged unusually dry soil, stable switchbacks, clear weather with light northeast wind. Search logs refer repeatedly to normal recreational conditions. Witness statement Pamela Yates, park volunteer, aged 58. She seemed like she knew what she was doing. Bear spray on her hip, water filter clipped to her shoulder strap. Audio from Keller's registration moment. Faint mechanical hum of the counter's refrigerator, overlaid by the sound of Velcro sealing her wrist pouch. These small noises would later anchor investigators reconstructing final movements. The visitor log showed 2 hikers had signed in immediately before her, Elaine and Jason Brockman from Toronto. The couple later told investigators they briefly exchanged pleasantries about trail conditions. She asked if we'd seen any wildlife. We mentioned caribou near mile 3. Just normal trail talk, Elaine said during her August statement. In Marion's apartment, rangers would later find a detailed hiking journal documenting 26 previous expeditions. The entry dated June 10th noted, Denali tomorrow. Easy loop should give me time to scout potential campsites for Dad's visit next month. The journal ended there beneath a paper-clipped photograph of Marion and her father at Summit Lake 5 years earlier. Routine competence is often the last visible sign before disappearance. By late afternoon of June 12th, the trail camera at Switchback 3 captured 2 silhouettes moving eastward. The timestamp, after frame verification, aligned within 9 minutes of Marion's projected schedule. One figure matched her backpack color and hydration tube configuration. The second figure remained unidentified, profile obscured by light flare. Ranger Report Field Note B761. Possible doubling on trail section at 1600 HRs. Recommend confirm. The film loop recovered 2 years later during internal audit showed the same figure hesitating at the overlook and adjusting pack straps. No further images followed. Topography data indicates she entered subalpine terrain as weather shifted. Temperature dropped to 42 Fahrenheit. Low fog formation documented by Meteorological Unit 18. Her sister recorded interview, August 2017. She never risked solo downcuts. She would stick to the marked main line. That night, air and sound vanish into fog. The GPS ping at Toklat Point ceased. According to Denali search records, 36 different electronic devices were tracked in that sector between 1600 and 2200 hours. Signal decay, typical for the area, occurred as temperature dropped. 4 devices showed anomalous patterns, one being Marion's phone. Senior Ranger Kevin Matsuda later testified. The signal degradation wasn't consistent with battery failure. It showed multiple attempts to connect, then nothing. The trees along that section of trail grow dense with black spruce. Sound carries oddly through the corridors. Hikers report hearing voices that seem closer than they are. The pine needles absorb footfalls. Soil samples from that June showed unusual dryness, leaving minimal impression evidence. 3 months before Marion's hike, trail maintenance crews had reported finding an unauthorized campsite 200 yards off the main trail. According to their report, site appears regularly used, but not on any permit list. Fire pit carefully disguised. Recommend increased patrols. Budget constraints delayed implementation. The last confirmed weather reading from the ridge showed wind from the northeast at 7 miles per hour, light precipitation beginning. Visibility decreased to approximately 400 yards by 1800 hours. The final ping from Marion's phone registered at 1822. The signal strength suggested it was still powered and attempting to connect, not damaged or deactivated. Protocols define loss as data absence, not yet as harm. Morning of June 14th, 2017. At 0600 hours, Denali Dispatch received a phone call request for welfare check. No contact since Sunday night. Within 40 minutes, Ranger Supervisor Malcolm Trent authorized first phase search grid under code SAR 294 Alpha. Standard daylight foot sweep to 5-mile radius. Audio log, copy that, launch north crew. Visual on trailhead sign, subject Keller, Marion. Radio interference obscures final syllables under rotor wash as helicopter N135 DNL lifts above ridge line. Search cadence maintained until 2100 hours without result. Team reports list, clear visibility, scattered light, minor avalanche debris near ridge margin, nothing disturbed. By evening, family members arrived at the visitor center. Her sister held the same trailhead logbook, finger tracing Marion's signature. Rangers advised patience. Hikers often re-emerge. The first 24 hours of a wilderness search follow rigorous procedures designed to filter normal delay from actual emergency. According to Alaska state search and rescue protocols, 78% of overdue hikers re-establish contact within this period. Standard operating procedure requires documenting these early hours in 5-minute increments. Sarah Keller, Marion's sister, provided investigators with a detailed inventory of her typical hiking gear. She always carried the same Osprey 45-liter pack, turquoise with black straps, lightweight tent, down sleeping, bag rated to 20 degrees, life straw filter, 3 days of food minimum regardless of trip length. The parking area cameras showed Marion's Honda Civic still in the overnight section, dusted with morning condensation. Inside, rangers found a folded sweatshirt, empty water bottle, and park brochure with Savage River Loop trail circled, not the route she had registered for. Meteorologist Diane Yamada, stationed at park headquarters. We had unusual temperature stability that week. No fronts moving through. Excellent visibility both days. Ideal hiking conditions. At 1900 hours, rangers retrieved Marion's apartment keys from her sister and conducted a welfare search of her residence. Nothing suggested her plans had changed. The coffee maker was set to brew on Monday morning. Her calendar showed a dental appointment on Tuesday, highlighted. By nightfall, Denali Dispatch upgraded the search to Phase 2, authorizing helicopter resources at first light. In early searches, silence still sounds like possibility. According to Alaska Missing Persons Repository, an average of over 100 outdoor disappearances per year occur within state-maintained wilderness zones. Less than 1 in 20 resolve beyond 7 days without direct evidence recovery. In remote terrain, standard operating procedure prioritizes containment radius over emotional urgency. Each step documents method before grief. June 15th through 18th saw full deployment, 70 personnel rotating 18-hour shifts, canines, aerial reconnaissance, carbon sensing drone arrays, ground teams cataloged boot impressions west of Rock Creek. Pattern analysis matched general female hiking footwear, but no definitive size correlation. Forestry technician Nathan O'Hara recorded debrief. The prints start clean and fade into moss downturns, like someone followed her, stepped inside her path, then angled off the trail. Helicopter footage overlay shows repeating grid passes, Green forest, scarred by search tape reflecting in afternoon glare. Evidence collection document 82 line 7. Recovered item, torn map segment, half folded, moisture damage consistent with 2-night exposure. Later confirmed to match print stock from Denali Visitor Center. Search teams found 3 abandoned campsites within the primary grid. All had been used within the previous month, according to soil compression analysis. One site contained the remains of a small warming fire that matched the window of Marion's disappearance. Ash samples showed residue from standard backpacking fuel tablets. Canine handler Regina Brooks reported. The dogs alerted strongly on a section of underbrush approximately 400 yards from the main trail. We recovered a hair elastic consistent with the type subject's sister identified, but DNA testing was inconclusive due to environmental degradation. The methodology of wilderness searches moves in predictable patterns, concentric circles from last known position, then radiating lines based on terrain features. Denali's search protocols had been refined through decades of experience. Search coordinator Thomas Shepard maintained 16 separate maps during the operation, each documenting a specific search element. Canine paths, air coverage, foot teams, night operations. At the 84-hour mark, Alaska State Troopers established an incident command center at the visitor parking area. The case designation changed from overdue hiker to missing person investigation. Physical evidence now required double documentation, once for search purposes, once for potential criminal investigation. Her co-workers at Anchorage Regional Hospital, where Marion worked as a physical therapist, organized volunteer search teams that operated in parallel with official efforts. According to sign-in sheets, 43 colleagues participated over 6 days. Each found object shrinks distance between data point and person, but direction remains ambiguous. During the following week, media coverage heightened. Anchorage Daily News article June 21st referred to experienced solo hiker missing, yet cited no foul play indicated. Meanwhile, family communications logs show mounting tension between hope and protocol. At the same time, searchers extended perimeter toward Savage River, terrain defined by shale, slides, and thick alder tangles. Night vision teams reported heat signatures that later proved to be caribou clusters. On day 10, equipment malfunction corrupted 3 hours of drone imagery, the only segment without redundant storage. SAR operations concluded official Phase 1 after 11 consecutive days, transitioning to limited continuous. By July 1st, only one ranger remained posted to sign-in observation. The transition from acute search to sustained investigation marks a psychological threshold for families. Sarah Keller later wrote in her victim impact statement, "There's no ceremony for it. One day, the command tent is gone. The maps stay on the wall, but fewer people look at them." Among professional search personnel, statistical awareness creates a different burden. Search coordinator Shepard noted in his after-action report, "At the 2-week mark, without evidence of subject movement or distress signaling, we transitioned to evidence preservation protocols rather than rescue operations." The physical toll of searching Denali's terrain mounted. 2 rescue personnel required medical evacuation during the operation, one for altitude sickness, another for a severe ankle sprain. The search zone expanded to over 18 square miles, requiring specialized teams for alpine environments above 7,000 feet. Local newspaper coverage began to shift focus. The July 5th Fairbanks News Miner article questioned wilderness protocols. Park officials maintained standard search methodologies, while family members expressed frustration over perceived gaps in coverage. The case file continued to grow, documentation accumulating without resolution. Evidence technician Andrea Maxwell documented 117 distinct items for processing, most proving unrelated to the case. Each potential evidence marker required GPS logging, photographic documentation, collection under chain of custody protocols, and laboratory analysis. One peculiarity emerged in the technical data. Cellular tower records showed Marion's phone attempting connections at irregular intervals for nearly 48 hours after her last confirmed location. The pattern was inconsistent with both normal use and battery depletion. Technical analysis from the service provider noted the device appears to have been powered on and off multiple times or moved between coverage zones intentionally. When resources are recalled, families keep the search alive through repetition. To investigators, silence hardens into record. On July 12, 2017, German tourist Dieter Kleinschmidt photographed the northern ridge of Mount Healy for his travel blog. 3 weeks later, when police circulated updated requests for public assistance, Kleinschmidt contacted authorities about an anomaly in his images. Enhancement of frame 147 showed what appeared to be a turquoise backpack lodged between rocks approximately 800 feet from any maintained trail. Recovery team field notes describe difficult terrain. Approach required technical climbing equipment. Site not visible from any established trail. Location inconsistent with fall trajectory or wildlife dispersal. Alaska State Trooper Christine Yazzie first to reach the site. The pack was positioned upright, leaning against a rock face as if placed deliberately. Contents remained organized, no signs of panicked rummaging or animal disturbance. Inventory of recovered items. Osprey 45-liter pack, turquoise, Mountain Hardwear 2-person tent, unused, women's down jacket, first aid kit with prescription medications matching Keller's, water filter, 3 protein bars, topographic map with route markings different from registered plan, headlamp with depleted batteries, and 1 hiking boot, right foot size 7, with soil embedded in the tread that did not match the recovery location. Conspicuously absent, Marion's phone, wallet, identification, and left boot. The discovery site stood in direct contradiction to search projections. According to GPS data, the location lay in the opposite direction from her last known heading, requiring either a deliberate route change or movement by others after her disappearance. Soil samples from the boot tread contained mineral composition consistent with stream bed 2 miles northwest of the recovery site, an area searched during initial operations but without findings. The contradiction suggested either searcher oversight or subsequent movement. Weather data for the recovery site documented unusual conditions, a microclimate pocket with higher humidity and lower wind than surrounding terrain. Evidence technicians noted this would preserve trace evidence longer than typical mountain environments. The backpack's condition became a critical focus. Technical analysis determined it had been exposed to elements for approximately 2 weeks, yet the positioning appeared deliberate, not consistent with abandonment during distress. The Alaska State Crime Lab identified partial fingerprints on the pack's exterior that did not match Marion's reference prints. Sarah Keller identified the recovered items. That's her pack. She's had it for years. When shown the single boot, she paused before adding, she would never continue with 1 boot. Never. By July 20th, the case designation formally changed from search and rescue operation to criminal investigation under Alaska State Troopers' jurisdiction. The transition required complete reprocessing of all previously collected evidence under criminal protocols. In wilderness disappearances, What remains often speaks more clearly than what vanished. The Criminology Unit established a dedicated evidence processing center at Denali headquarters by July 25th. Digital mapping specialists created three-dimensional terrain models integrating all search data, recovery locations, and cellular signal patterns. The visualization revealed a disturbing pattern. The backpack recovery site created a nearly perfect equilateral triangle with Marion's last confirmed location and the final cellular ping. Crime scene investigator Robert Chen documented the pattern. The triangulation appears non-random. Each point falls approximately 2.3 miles from the others, regardless of terrain difficulty. This suggests deliberate movement rather than opportunistic behavior. During the evidence reprocessing, technicians discovered a partial fingerprint on Marion's recovered map that did not match her reference prints. The print quality allowed only 7 points of comparison, insufficient for court identification, but enough to enter the law enforcement database for potential matches. Alaska State Trooper Captain Elena Vasquez authorized expansion of the investigation beyond the wilderness context. We need to examine the victim's entire life pattern, not just her wilderness activities. Targeted victimization often has precursors. Investigators conducted comprehensive background analysis, financial records, communication patterns, workplace relationships, and recent life changes. Her credit card showed no unusual activity beyond normal outdoor equipment purchases. Phone records revealed consistent communication patterns, primarily with family and co-workers. One anomaly emerged from the digital forensics team. In the 3 weeks before her hike, Marion had conducted multiple searches for information about remote Denali campsites, not on official trails. Her browser history showed research on off-trail camping Denali and wilderness privacy regulations. Wilderness. Recreation often masks a deeper human need: isolation in controlled doses, solitude within safety parameters. For some predators, this predictable seeking becomes opportunity. By August, investigators had interviewed 37 park employees, 22 registered hikers from the same period, and 15 people from Marion's personal and professional circles. No clear threat pattern emerged, though 2 co-workers mentioned her recent interest in more challenging solo hikes. The investigation now encompassed 2 concurrent timelines: Marion's last known activities and the physical evidence dispersal pattern. The contradiction between them suggested deliberate manipulation of the search environment. According to national crime statistics, fewer than 1 in 3 wilderness disappearances with evidence of criminal activity result in prosecution. The combination of environmental degradation, complex jurisdiction, and evidence contamination during initial search operations creates procedural barriers that often prove insurmountable. The evidence speaks in fragments, each separated from context by wilderness and time. On September 3, 2017, routine ranger patrol discovered the remains of an unauthorized campsite approximately 3 miles from where Marion's backpack was recovered. Unlike standard backcountry camps, this site showed evidence of repeated use: compacted soil, multiple fire cycles, and a carefully constructed stone windbreak. Forensic analysis recovered 34 distinct fingerprints from the site. 3 partial prints matched the unidentified print from Marion's map. The campsite contained no direct evidence connecting to her case, but soil composition matched samples from her recovered boot. Park Service. Archaeological technician James Running Bear documented unusual aspects of the site. The configuration suggests long-term observation rather than recreation, positioned with clear sight lines to 3 major trail intersections while remaining concealed from normal routes. Investigators now recognized a pattern emerging from isolated data points: the unauthorized campsite, the deliberately placed backpack, the calculated triangulation of evidence. The randomness of wilderness began to resolve into methodology. By mid-September, the investigative team had constructed a comprehensive timeline integrating all evidence. The visualization covered an entire wall of the command center: photographs, maps, signal data, and witness statements connected by colored threads indicating verification status. The pattern revealed a 4-day window when Marion's movements diverged from both her registered plans and normal hiking patterns. According to the timeline, Marion had stopped at a scenic overlook at approximately 1600 hours on June 12th. Her last verifiable action was adjusting her pack straps before continuing along the trail. After this point, all evidence suggested manipulation rather than authentic movement. The crime scene processing team had recovered a total of 172 items from the search area. After elimination of unrelated materials, 23 items showed potential connection to the case. 9 contained DNA or fingerprints that did not match Marion or search personnel. Alaska State Trooper forensic psychologist Melissa Hayes developed an initial offender profile. The evidence pattern suggests someone familiar with search protocols, possibly even search and rescue trained. The deliberate placement of items indicates knowledge of how investigators think and move through wilderness terrain. Wilderness predation operates differently from urban patterns. The isolation eliminates witnesses, expands time frames, and allows methodical operations without interruption. For investigators, it transforms every natural feature into potential evidence or concealment. When human methodology emerges from wilderness randomness, search becomes hunting in reverse. On October 4th, 2017, the case took an unexpected turn. A hiker reported finding a buried cache near the Savage River Loop Trail, approximately 6 miles from Marion's last known location. The cache, a waterproof container buried beneath rocks, contained a woman's left hiking boot, size 7, matching the right boot, recovered with Marion's backpack. Inside the boot, a folded paper with GPS coordinates written in handwriting later confirmed to be Marion's. The coordinates pointed to a location investigators had not yet searched: a small canyon beyond designated trails. Alaska State Trooper Lieutenant Aaron Knutson described the discovery in his field report. The cache appeared recently disturbed when found. Container showed minimal environmental exposure despite 4 months in wilderness conditions. Suggests it was placed much more recently than the disappearance timeline. The discovery raised disturbing questions. Either Marion had created the cache herself for unknown reasons, or someone with access to her possessions had strategically placed it to direct the investigation. The handwriting analysis proved authentic, but forensic document specialists could not determine when it was written. The GPS coordinates led to a narrow ravine approximately 9 miles from the visitor center, well beyond normal day hiking range. The approach required technical climbing skills and specialized equipment. The search team assembled for the operation included members with advanced alpine training. On October 12th, the technical team reached the coordinates. They discovered a small cave entrance partially concealed by fallen rocks. Inside, evidence technicians documented a carefully arranged scene: a sleeping pad, emergency blanket, food wrappers, and a woman's watch confirmed to be Marion's. The arrangement suggested temporary habitation rather than evidence disposal. Most disturbing was a series of marks carved into the cave wall, 28 vertical lines, in 4 groups of 7, with the final mark made with a different tool. Technical analysis later determined the marks had been made over a period of approximately 1 month. No human remains were found at the site. The cave contained additional evidence, a makeshift calendar system using stone arrangements, food packaging with production dates from July after Marion's disappearance, and a hiking sock containing $87 in cash and a handwritten list of supplies. Blood evidence recovered from the cave wall matched Marion's DNA profile, but the pattern and volume suggested injury rather than fatal trauma. The technical assessment concluded blood spatter consistent with defensive wound, not exsanguination. Subject likely remained ambulatory after injury. The discoveries fundamentally altered the investigation's direction. What began as a wilderness disappearance now suggested extended survival, possible captivity, and intentional evidence placement. In wilderness investigations, found evidence creates as many questions as it answers. November brought deteriorating weather conditions to Denali. Snow accumulation restricted search operations to lower elevations, and technical teams could no longer safely access the higher terrain where the most recent evidence had been found. The investigation necessarily shifted focus from physical search to analytical processing of existing evidence. Digital forensics uncovered new information from Marion's recovered electronics. Cloud backup data revealed she'd photographed something unusual 3 days before her hike, what appeared to be boot prints outside her apartment building. The image metadata placed it at 4:17 in the morning. She had not reported the incident to authorities. Her sister Sarah provided context during follow-up interviews. Marion mentioned feeling watched about 2 weeks before the hike. She brushed it off as being paranoid, said she was spending too much time alone. Concurrently, forensic technicians completed advanced analysis of soil samples from the various evidence sites. The results painted a disturbing picture. Material from 6 different Denali ecosystems appeared at the cave location, suggesting someone had deliberately transported soil from various park regions to the site. Alaska State Trooper Captain Elena Vasquez summarized the developing theory. We're seeing evidence of methodical preparation. The perpetrator appears to have established multiple sites throughout the park, possibly over an extended period before targeting Keller. The soil transfer suggests attempt to confuse forensic analysis. The crime lab identified trace evidence on Marion's recovered boot, plant material that had been cut, not torn naturally. The pattern suggested someone had deliberately placed vegetation from another location on the boot before its discovery. By December, investigators had constructed a comprehensive victimology profile. Marion fit several high-risk categories for wilderness predation. She hiked alone, maintained predictable patterns, documented her activities online, and typically selected moderate trails with reliable cellular service. Her social media contained detailed information about her hiking preferences and schedule. On December 18th, the investigation intersected with another case. Forensic comparison identified similarities between Marion's disappearance and an unsolved case from Glacier National Park 3 years earlier. In both incidents, the victim's equipment was recovered in a triangular pattern with items deliberately placed rather than scattered. Both cases involved solo female hikers who had documented their trips on social media. The Glacier case had gone cold after 6 months of investigation. The victim, 28-year-old Helena Ryan from Missoula, Montana, had never been found, though her backpack, 1 boot, and personal items were recovered in a pattern disturbingly similar to Marion's case. Lieutenant Knutson established direct communication with the Glacier investigation team. Their case files revealed another critical similarity. Soil from multiple park ecosystems had been found at each evidence recovery site, suggesting the same methodology of evidence manipulation. Patterns emerge only when multiple cases align. What appears isolated becomes methodology. January 25th, 2018. The Joint Wilderness Crimes Task Force, formed in response to the connected cases, received an unexpected break. A wildlife research camera placed by the University of Alaska had captured images of a figure moving through restricted terrain near the canyon where Marion's cave site had been discovered. The camera, designed to monitor wolverine movements, had been operating on a 6-month data collection cycle. The images, though partially obscured by weather conditions, showed a male figure carrying a pack similar to standard search and rescue equipment. The timestamp placed the movement on June 16th, 4 days after Marion's disappearance, during active search operations. Task Force Commander Raymond Blackfeather noted the significance. The individual is wearing what appears to be official-looking uniform components, but moved through an area that was not within any authorized search grid for that date. The research camera had captured 3 frames before motion detection ceased. Technical enhancement revealed partial views of equipment inconsistent with recreational hiking, rope systems, technical climbing gear, and what appeared to be a communications device, not matching standard search team equipment. Investigator cross-reference determined no authorized search personnel had been assigned to that grid section on that date. The figure had been operating outside official search protocols while appearing to conduct search activities. On February 3rd, facial recognition processing identified a potential match. Raymond Silas, 43, former seasonal ranger at Denali, and 2 other national parks. Employment records showed he had worked at both Denali and Glacier during the periods preceding both disappearance cases. Silas had been dismissed from National Park Service employment 3 years earlier for unauthorized use of equipment and violation of wilderness management protocols. His termination records indicated he had established camps in restricted areas and conducted off-duty research without proper permits. His employment history revealed a pattern. He had worked at 9 different national parks over 15 years, typically in wilderness management or backcountry patrol positions. His performance evaluation showed technical competence, but noted difficulty adhering to team protocols and excessive interest in solo patrol assignments. Wilderness management requires balancing human safety with environmental protection. Those who patrol its boundaries occupy unique positions. Autonomous authority in isolated terrain. Alaska state troopers executed search warrants on Silas's residence in Talkeetna on February 12th. The search recovered climbing equipment matching impressions found near the cave site, topographic maps with unmarked locations circled in red, and a collection of outdoor equipment catalogs with women's hiking gear circled. Most significantly, investigators discovered a hidden compartment containing driver's licenses belonging to 3 women, including Helena Ryan from the Glacier case. Marion Keller's license was not among them. Silas could not be located at the residence and had not been seen by neighbors for approximately 2 months. When evidence forms a pattern, absence becomes as significant as presence. The manhunt for Raymond Silas expanded across 5 states and 3 Canadian provinces by March 2018. His financial record showed systematic cash withdrawals in the months preceding Marion's disappearance, totaling over $20,000. His vehicle, a 2007 Toyota 4Runner, was found abandoned at a trailhead in Olympic National Park in Washington State on March 18th, containing camping equipment and technical manuals on wilderness survival. The vehicle search revealed critical evidence: a notebook containing detailed observations of multiple female hikers, including Marion Keller. The entries documented hiking patterns, equipment preferences, and vulnerability assessments. One page contained a hand-drawn map of Marion's apartment complex, with her units circled. FBI Behavioral Analysis Unit Specialist Dr. Catherine Winters joined the investigation, developing an offender profile. The subject displays methodical predation behaviors consistent with a mission-oriented offender. The extensive preparation, evidence manipulation, and post-crime engagement with investigation suggests he derives satisfaction from controlling both victims and investigators. On April 2nd, Canadian border personnel at a remote British Columbia crossing reported contact with an individual matching Silas's description. By the time authorities responded, he had disappeared into the wilderness. Canadian search resources deployed, but deteriorating weather conditions hampered efforts. Meanwhile, forensic analysis of Silas's financial activities revealed connections to wilderness equipment purchased through anonymous shipping services, including specialized items, matching evidence found at both disappearance sites. Transaction records showed he had established supply caches in at least 7 national parks. By early May, investigators had identified 3 additional missing persons cases, potentially connected to Silas, all involving solo female hikers in national parks where he had previously worked. In each case, partial equipment recovery had occurred, but no victims had been found. The pattern revealed a predator who understood both wilderness and investigation protocols, using his knowledge to extend the period between disappearance and evidence discovery. His methodology suggested he monitored search operations, strategically placing evidence to misdirect resources. On May 15th, the investigation made a devastating discovery. Analysis of GPS data from Silas's recovered vehicle revealed it had visited the location where Marion's backpack was found, but 3 days after search teams had already processed the site. This confirmed he had been monitoring the investigation and manipulating the evidence trail during active search operations. FBI technical analyst Preston Williams documented the implication. The subject appears to have been operating in parallel with search teams, observing their movements, then placing evidence in already searched locations to create the impression items had been missed during initial operations. The realization forced a complete reassessment of all recovered evidence. What investigators had built their case upon had been deliberately positioned to create a specific narrative. The true events of Marion's disappearance remained obscured by this manipulation. Where methodology becomes visible, the perpetrator has already moved beyond it. July 12, 2018, 1 year after Marion Keller's disappearance. The investigation had expanded to encompass 5 confirmed cases across 3 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Raymond Silas remained at large, though reported sightings had narrowed the search to wilderness areas in British Columbia. The Joint Wilderness Crimes Task Force had established a dedicated analytical center in Anchorage, processing evidence connections between all cases. The pattern recognition software identified 27 distinct behavioral signatures common across the cases, creating the first comprehensive profile of wilderness predation methodology. Families of the victims formed a support network, meeting monthly in rotating locations. Sarah Keller emerged as an advocate for wilderness safety reforms, testifying before a Senate committee on park security protocols. Her testimony led to the establishment of enhanced tracking systems for solo hikers in national parks. "My sister wasn't just lost," she told the committee. "She was hunted by someone who knew exactly how the system would respond when she vanished." The investigative team had constructed a comprehensive timeline of Silas's movements across 2 decades, revealing a pattern of seasonal employment at parks followed by disappearances in those same locations months or years later. His methodology had evolved over time, becoming increasingly sophisticated in evidence manipulation and investigation interference. On September 23rd, a significant breakthrough occurred. A wilderness guide in Jasper National Park, Canada, reported discovering human remains in a remote alpine area. DNA analysis confirmed the remains belonged to Helena Ryan, the victim from the Glacier National Park case 3 years earlier. The recovery site contained evidence of prolonged captivity rather than immediate homicide. Forensic analysis indicated Helena had survived for approximately 7 months after her disappearance before succumbing to exposure. The site contained calendar markings similar to those found in the Denali cave. This discovery fundamentally altered understanding of the perpetrator's methodology. What investigators had classified as a murder case now appeared to be a pattern of extended wilderness captivity, a form of predation previously undocumented in criminal literature. By November, the investigation had identified 14 wilderness locations across North America, potentially connected to Silas's activities. Search operations continued through increasingly difficult winter conditions, prioritizing sites with highest probability based on victim connection. The psychological impact on search personnel became a significant concern. Task Force Commander Blackfeather implemented mandatory counseling for team members. We're not just looking for evidence anymore. We're searching for survivors against decreasing odds. For families, each discovery brought both clarity and renewed grief. The evidence suggested victims had survived far longer than initially believed, raising painful questions about missed rescue opportunities. On March 18, 2019, 21 months after Marion Keller's disappearance, Canadian authorities apprehended Raymond Silas at a remote supply store in northern British Columbia. His capture came not through tactical operations but routine recognition. A store clerk identified him from wanted bulletins while processing his supply order. At the time of his arrest, Silas possessed detailed maps of 6 national parks, technical climbing equipment, and 3 different identification documents. He offered no resistance but maintained complete silence during transport to custody. The search immediately expanded to all locations identified in his possession. On March 25th, a search team located a remote cabin near the Yukon border. Inside, investigators discovered evidence of recent habitation, food supplies, heating equipment, and a logbook containing encoded entries dating back 3 years. Most significantly, the cabin contained personal effects belonging to Marion Keller, her wallet, identification, and the missing left boot that formed a pair with the one recovered near Denali. Technical analysis confirmed her DNA throughout the structure, suggesting extended presence rather than evidence storage. No human remains were found at the site. The cabin search revealed a disturbing operational methodology. Hidden compartments contained surveillance equipment, Park Service uniform components, and manuals on search and rescue protocols. A collection of maps showed detailed notations of patrol schedules and coverage gaps for multiple national parks. On April 2nd, forensic teams discovered a hidden cellar beneath the cabin floor. The space contained evidence of long-term confinement, restraint systems disguised as climbing equipment, food storage designed for extended occupation, and a ventilation system allowing for sealed isolation. The cellar walls bore calendar markings identical to those found in the Denali cave and the Helena Ryan recovery site, vertical lines in groups of 7. The final group of marks at the cabin site ended abruptly at 4 lines. Psychological assessment of the evidence suggested Marion had been held at multiple locations, including the Denali cave site and the Canadian cabin. The timeline reconstruction indicated she had likely survived at least 9 months after her disappearance. Raymond Silas was charged with multiple counts of kidnapping, false imprisonment, and murder across 2 countries. He maintained complete silence during legal proceedings, offering no information about potential survivors or additional victims. In June 2019, a wilderness training group discovered an isolated cave system in the Wrangell St. Elias Range near the Alaska-Canada border. Inside, they found recent evidence of human habitation and a series of calendar marks scratched into stone, 54 vertical lines in groups of 7, with 3 additional marks in the final group. The site contained a torn page from a Denali Visitor Center trail map. On the reverse, written in what would later be confirmed as Marion Keller's handwriting, "Still here." The search continues. The trail register remained at the Denali Visitor Center, line 247 still bearing Marion's signature. The wilderness never changed, only what people brought to it.